Well, you're seated here at your table and you want to study some mathematics, but you have no idea what to do. I think it's time we talk. And first of all, we need to understand some priorities. If you've been given homework, that has to be done. Set time aside to do it. Normally teachers don't give it just because. I know you may feel that's the case, and in rare exceptions that is, but mostly it's because teachers know that unless you practice a certain amount you won't understand the work and you won't get good at it. Now, even if you do understand it, you need to do that amount of work to get faster and better anyway. So, number one, get your homework done. Now, a few suggestions before we go on to step number two. If you're doing your homework, first of all, make sure you understand what's required. Don't go home from school if you still don't understand. Ask your teacher, ask fellow students, ask a different teacher, ask the head of the department, ask someone and find out what to do. If you do get home, then you can ask your parents, or you can go to social media, you can ask your friends. In some instances, you still have contact with teachers after school. If you're boarding, you probably have tutors. There is someone that you should be able to contact to ask for help, to find out what to do. If you know what to do, then my suggestion is this. If you've been given something like 20 questions to do, or 40 questions, then make it a bit of a game. If you actually understand what you're doing, time how long it takes you to do, say, 5 questions. Now, 5 questions takes you, look, it really depends, doesn't it, on what you're studying, but let's say 5 questions takes 5 minutes. And you have 15 other questions to do to complete your 20, then you know that's going to take you roughly 15, or it should. And you should set your timer, or watch the clock and try to beat the 15-minute mark. Racing the clock helps time pass, it helps keep you focused. It also helps you understand how long it takes you to do questions, so that when you're preparing for exams, if you know that this kind of question is worth 1 mark, and you can typically do it in 1 minute, but the teacher's going to allow you 1.5 minutes, then you really don't need to get that much faster for your test. If you realise they're taking you 3 minutes, then you obviously need more practice. But there you go. Do the homework, ask for help, use a timer, just get it done. Right, homework's out of the way. What do we do now? As far as the teacher is concerned, you've satisfied requirements, but now you're wanting to study in order to get better at mathematics and in order to be able to pass tests. Well, I think the motivation of just doing well in a test can be a useful one, but I really encourage you, if you really want to understand mathematics, try to develop a drive to understand the subject. And deep down you'll know whether you understand material or not. Understand your motivation and choose from these 4 things. You're going to practice your skills, that is, doing things. You're going to make lists of the things you need to know, summaries. There are times when you're going to have to learn how to avoid making mistakes in classwork, in assignments, in tests, just generally. And the 4th thing is sometimes when you're just bored, you need to go exploring to become more aware of the mathematics out there and to expose yourself to all kinds of problems and puzzles and different ways of thinking. So these are your 4 things. And when you sit down to study, you can choose between one of the 4. You can choose one of them. So if you don't particularly feel like doing a summary, or if you don't particularly feel like you just don't seem to have the creative urge to go exploring, well, you can do some practice, or you can try to develop skills or try to develop habits to avoid mistakes. So let's talk about these 4 things that you can choose between. If they're skills, then you either do them on paper or you do them in your head. You can do them by yourself or you can do them with friends. And I encourage you at times to study with a group of friends, but most of the time to study by yourself. If it's skill-based, decide whether you're going to do it in your head or on paper. Now, if you're going to do them in your head, you need short questions, a lot of them. It could be something as simple as simplifying expressions involving powers or indices. It could be factorising quadratic equations. It could be solving linear equations. You might even, with a bit of practice, solve simultaneous equations in your head. But you should be able to find a page in your textbook where you've got 20, 30, 40, 50 questions all packed together. And none of them should take you more than 10 to 30 seconds. And probably even as short as 2 or 3 or 5 seconds. Things that you can do in your head quickly, lots of them to get very, very good. And believe it or not, you can get good at doing things like factorising quadratic equations. You can get to the point where most of them you'll be able to factorise in your head or with very little paperwork in 5 or 10 seconds. And that's a good thing to aim for. So yes, you can do head work. Racing the clock's good, or if you're working with friends, you can challenge each other, test each other. One can check the answers while one works out the results, and then you swap over and someone else does a section of questions while you check the answers. If you're doing them on paper, I encourage you, and I should have said this when you were doing your homework, practice setting your work out carefully. Don't take shortcuts. If it's on paper, do it well. Line your equal signs up. Draw decent sized diagrams. Set things out on the page in a way that makes sense to you and is clear, and where the flow of your thoughts down the page is smooth. Use subheadings. The idea of practicing this is so that you get very, 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 very good at setting your thoughts out on paper. And if you don't practice that, it's surprising. It's not something you just suddenly conjure up. I've had many, many students over the years, sadly, quite talented ones, who up until, say, 14 or 15 years of age have done extremely well in their mathematics, simply on raw ability. Because the questions are shorter, they can do most of them in their head or with a calculator. And they've been scoring 70, 80, 85, even 90%. And within 12 months of starting their senior high school work, they're getting 20 to 30 to 35%. I am not exaggerating. I've seen it many, many times. And in New South Wales schools, I'm talking about going from year 10 to year 11. Year 11 and 12 are our senior years. And I've seen so many students fall apart because they've not practiced writing their material properly. And they fall in a heap. They think, when the time comes, I'll do it. No, no, no. You practice. You practice from the beginning and do it well. So there's number one. Drill work either in your head by yourself or with friends, or you do it on paper and you set some time aside. You can race the clock if you want, but you set your work out properly and you do it well. That raises the third point. How do you avoid making careless mistakes? Now, I'm probably not the one to say anything because I've made 2 or 3 careless mistakes in my videos, I guess my mind's on other things when I'm trying to prepare a video. But essentially, the way to avoid making careless mistakes is to develop good habits of setting out, good habits of thinking through a question. So, if you've made careless mistakes in your homework, or if you've made careless mistakes in a test, then the third option you have, I've discussed number one, is to do drill work. The third option you have is to develop habits to avoid making those careless mistakes. So get yourself a past test paper and look at the questions you got wrong that were careless, and you thought, I knew the answer to that. That was silly, that was stupid of me. Look at what you did. Look at how you set the work out or how you thought through the question, and then redo the question yourself a different way. It might be that you need to develop a habit of rereading the question when you're finished to make sure you fully answered it. That's a simple habit. But if it's not part of the way you work, then you need to make it part of the way you work. If you have neglected to draw diagrams at all, or if your diagrams are really clumsy, then practice drawing good ones. If you realise that you've got bits of your solution all over the page in a scattered format, then work out some way to structure it on a page, in columns or under headings or in blocks or something that makes sense, and practice it. But question by question by question, you can find the questions you've made errors in carelessly. Set time aside during your study time to fix that and to practice. Find questions in your textbook, and practice to get better at them. Right, they sort of go hand in hand, and I call them number one and number three because they're the order that I presented them in other videos. Number two is summaries, or are summaries. What do we do with summaries? You can do it on separate paper or in a book. It really doesn't matter, but they should be done on paper. You should, topic by topic, go through your textbook and your workbook from school and write, first of all, under the heading, for example, quadratic equations, everything you need to know about quadratic equations for that part of the course. Now, of course, if it's something that you know very, very, very well, you can omit it. For example, no one bothers when we're writing down a summary of what we need to know to handle numbers. I need to remember that 2 times 3 is 6 or something like that. Really basic stuff that you've understood very well, omit from the summary. Write down what you need to learn. Once it's all down there on the page, and that might take you 15 or 20 minutes to go through a particular chapter, page by page, and just copying down definitions, copying down sample explanations that you need to remember. When that's finished, perhaps take a little bit of a break, 5-minute break or something. Go for a quick walk, go to the toilet, go and have a bite to eat, phone someone, but come back fairly shortly afterwards and look at it, read through it again, and then rewrite the summary in a structured form. You might decide that there are 3 or 4 ideas that are very similar or very much connected that you can put under one heading. Another little slab of ideas might all relate to one diagram, so make the diagram a focus of that part of your summary. It's entirely up to you and the way you think. I've seen student summaries of the same topic that look entirely different. So it's what you need to learn, structured the way you need to remember it. Once you've written it out neatly, you can get rid of the first scribbled form of your summary, but now you have a neat structured form of your summary for that topic, hopefully with a heading written across the top. That is something you do topic by topic by topic through your school year. Now once you have it, you need somewhere safe to put it. A folder or a drawer, a particular drawer on your desk or a shelf or somewhere. But you need it for safekeeping. A day or two after you've prepared that summary, you need to test yourself on it. So, when you're sitting down to do your mathematics, you might decide, I will spend 5 minutes, that's probably all it will take, 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the most, to reproduce the summary of that topic. So you might get a blank sheet of paper and say, quadratic equations, and try to reproduce the structured summary that you designed only a couple of days earlier. Once you've finished putting everything you can remember on paper, you open your drawer or your folder, get the original out and compare them. And whatever there is that's different, you need to rewrite in full. Writing is important. It engages the proprioceptive I'm not thinking well, am I? The proprioceptive ability of your body, your sight. If you speak as you're doing it, you're using your voice and your ears. You're trying to involve all your senses in doing this. But writing is important. Write your summaries. Don't just read them. Once you've reproduced all of it accurately, put it away. That takes 5 minutes. You can do some other aspect of your mathematics. A day or two later again, try the same thing. Blank sheet of paper, try to write the summary. Compare it with the original. Anything that's different, write out in full. Within a few cycles of this, within say a week, you will probably find that you're reproducing that page pretty accurately. And if you can do that for every topic in your mathematics course by the end of the year, you'll be doing very well with your knowledge base indeed. So that's the second one, is to write your summaries and practice doing them. And if at any stage you feel that you're getting weak on a summary, you practice it. If you feel that you're getting to know it too well, then it's time to go through that summary and write an even shorter and a more abbreviated one. I used to call them my summary squared and my summary cubed and my summary to the fourth power as I refined and refined and refined my summaries. And gradually I'd find various topics would sort of blink out of existence because I knew everything that was required for that part of the course. And that was a good feeling. But I feel I'm repeating myself, but you could write a summary, you could check yourself on a summary, or you could revise and shrink your summary. Those are things you can do with summaries. So that's 1, 2 and 3 covered. Now the fourth one is a bit more interesting. Sometimes you've just had enough of doing schoolwork. Sometimes you've had enough of doing the textbook, structured work, repetitive work that you get from your teacher and in class, which is necessary. But sometimes you just can't face it anymore, and it's a good time then to say, I'm still going to do some mathematics, but I will do some puzzles. There are plenty of puzzle books you can get from your local library, your school library, or in some cases even your news agency. You can collect them. I've collected a lot I've got from op shops, opportunity shops, second-hand shops, garage sales, things like that, people throwing them out. I have quite an extensive library I've collected that way. But somewhere you can get your hands on books of puzzles or other textbooks that you can have at home or borrow just for a week or two. You also have the internet for access. You have your teachers you can ask for other resources. And let me add one little thing that I've seen so little of now. When I was at school, it seemed a little bit more common, or maybe we were just a bit unusual, but another student and I started up a mathematics club. Now, it sounds a bit nerdy, I suppose it was, but we had a club that ran one lunchtime a week. I think from memory it's Tuesday or Thursday or something, each week, and either a teacher or one of the two of us would give a talk on mathematics, and we would give a talk on something that was not part of the school curriculum. I remember giving talks on Babylonian differencing techniques and number theory and things. I remember the other student, who was a year behind me at school, who's now a professor of mathematics, by the way, I remember he once gave a talk on flexagons, and he had found out about these, and he actually designed what was at that time the biggest flexagon in the world. I think this is before the very early days of Guinness Book of Records, and I think he probably should have got in touch with them, but he didn't. But he had got something extraordinary, like 200 metres of paper, and folded it up into this huge hexagonal flexagon that you could fold, and different faces would come up. It was quite impressive. And we would give these sorts of talks, and students would come and eat their lunch. Create a mathematics club. Ask your teachers if there's some aspect of mathematics they'd like to share that's not part of the course. But you need this stimulation, and go exploring on the internet. There are lots of interesting videos on YouTube, and lots of good channels like Numberphile and things like that, produced by quite reputable mathematicians. Watch them, go exploring, and when you see something that intrigues you, spend some time on it, and be prepared to spend not just 2 or 3 or 5 minutes, but if it's something that truly intrigues you, or that you see as a challenge, be prepared to spend half an hour, or even 2 or 3 hours or more exploring that aspect of mathematics. You might even continue that for days or weeks. There were occasions I did that when I was at school. I remember at one stage I was quite fascinated by the Fibonacci series, and I spent weeks and weeks and weeks on it. I discovered all sorts of fascinating things, linking it to Pascal's triangle. I actually worked out the formula for the Fibonacci sequence by myself, which I thought was a phenomenal achievement, using simultaneous equations. And it was 3 or 4 or 5 weeks I spent just exploring the Fibonacci sequence and similar sequences. So be prepared to invest some time. There we have it. I suppose there are other things you can do, and I can talk about if you have a particular talent, if you like movement, get up and move around the room while you're reciting things or learning things, or if you're a very social person, do it with people. If you like writing poetry or music, find some aspect of mathematics to write poetry or music to. There are these creative things, but basically, step 1, get your homework done, and the next step, when you're sitting down to do other mathematics, choose one of the 4 things to do. Practice your skills either in your head or on paper, and do them on paper properly. Write your summaries and check them. Test yourself on them. Look over your past homework and your past exam papers for careless errors that you made. Work out what habits you can develop to avoid them and practice those habits. And then finally, you could choose to simply go exploring and have fun and challenge yourself in unusual ways. And this will open your eyes to a lot of other aspects of mathematics. So when you do sit down at the desk and you're not sure what to do and your homework is complete, there are 4 good suggestions for you to consider. I hope that's helped. If it has, please leave a comment. I'd appreciate it if you click on the like button, and I'd also appreciate it if you subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, so you can hear about other videos that I create. Thank you very much for watching.